so that we have that going. Great. So now we are recording. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight for the May SWAB meeting. We don't have presenter tonight, but we do have some kind of internal stuff to work on as we're nearing the end of our term, which will be renewed, but we have some internal stuff to work on with that. So let me just pull up some things first before diving into that. We can start with some updates, just because some of the issues we've been working on are moving pretty quickly through things. So at the top of the meeting, we can kind of just review where some of those issues are and some immediate next steps that folks have. So the first thing to update folks on, sorry, it's still loading, but the first thing was talking about our work on composting, and in particular, restoring funding to community composting. So Save Our Compost organized a rally with council member, the chair of the sanitation committee, on Monday ahead of a city council hearing for oversight and budget issues related to DSMY. So we had both of that happening on Monday, both the rally ahead of time and the city council hearing. The way that this was pitched is that basically the mayor had cut funding for community composting, in addition to other DSMY expenses, but the community composting was one that we had focused a lot on. So basically those cuts were made outside of the regular budget session, and then another budget cycle started. So whereas initially we were advocating for restoration of funding outside of the budget cycle, now it is whether community composting is included within the budget. And so it was not in the mayor's, at least not fully to the extent it was before the cuts, but City Council's response to that preliminary budget did include a call to fully restore community composting. And so now this is kind of that final effort to get it into the budget. So I'm wondering if someone was at the rally ahead of time or at the hearing, if they want to just give some updates on how that went, what the rally looked like outside, what they took from the hearing. So if anyone was there and wants to share, now you can do that. And then if folks have next steps, you can also share that as well. I think there's some more immediate next steps for some of the plastic work. There's ongoing calls for particularly with the composting on parks land, big reuse. So if you're interested in getting involved in that, that's something that's going on. But I think the push for this Monday was one of the bigger things. Mary, yes. Open, you're muted.
I did listen to the hearing, and Uli Nishin did participate on behalf of the SWABs, and that testimony has been sent to everyone. It's basically a rehash of a letter that we sent to Mayor Adams and Adrian Adams last fall. And I would say that there was some kind of weird solidarity going on with people wearing green ties. I mean, Justin Brennan even had green glass in his glasses and his tie, and the sanitation, the people at the sanitation table with Jessica Tish were all wearing these green ties that were a strange color. So, and she did express a lot of support for community composting. Although she said she could not speak to the budget cuts and why they had taken place. So I'm not sure what's going on, but you know, there was a lot of vague stuff. Like, we'd like to do more composting, but 80% of Queens is not composted, Queens Organics. So, but we raised our flag as we have been, and you know, with the same words, basically.
Thank you for that.
I do-
Bilal. Oh,
Sorry.
no problem. We'll go Bilal and then Allison.
Thank you, Chairman Ryan, for recognizing me. I did not participate in any of those things. I've been quite discouraged and very disappointed in the mayoral's administration and the handling of the city's fiscal affairs and other affairs, the student protests and et cetera. It's been a whole fiasco. It's a mess. I don't like being pessimistic about things. It's hard to do that when you have people saying that you have people championing our cause, which I'm happy that members of the city council are. And then you have the sanitation department who can't give up anything more substantial other than, you know, maybe, or, you know, a broken whatever. But then you have a mayor who is in charge of the fiscal affairs of the city, who's basically chopping a lot of the essential services that people rely on is being chopped. You know, composting, the libraries, which is all in tangent together, which affect us all and all of our communities, it's on the chopping block. And it doesn't seem like there is any light at the end of the tunnel for this. That something is going to be a give or take in terms of the sacrifice that they're going to be wanting to support, but it's not going to be fully funded. It's just, that's my outlook on things with the city. This mayor is not a green mayor. He's not. It's quite evident that he's not. And I don't know how much power the council can keep pressuring him to do if he has control of the fiscal affairs of the city. That's all I wanted to say.
Great, thank you for sharing. Allison?
Yeah, I certainly agree with a lot of what was just said, and especially as, you know, now the city apparently has like $1 billion surplus, you know, unprojected for this year, this fiscal and next fiscal. So, you know, I'm trying to be optimistic that in light of that, I mean, how can they not restore the budget cuts to composting as well as any number of things? I did not go to the rally. I heard it was very well attended. There was a lot more people for the compost rally than for the parks rally, which was great. Funniest thing I saw at one of the rallies was a kid, you know, a child holding a sign that said, "Mayor Badams, you know, restore our cuts." I just thought that was hysterical. If anyone needs comic relief from this, it's been hard. And then the thing is also, you know, there was the hearing, and you can still submit testimony by tomorrow. So encouraging people to do that. And there's still phone banking. You know, we're still calling council members. So keep those calls up. There's phone banking that we're still trying to get. You know, Big Reuse is still very much in jeopardy of losing their site. Last I heard, they're trying to get Shaker to, you know, try to get DSNY and Parks together in a meeting to mediate, hopefully, a positive outcome for that, but you know, I don't know. So I just encourage everybody to keep calling your council members, especially Shaker, if anybody has him.
And thank you. Miri. Then you're muted.
Sorry.
No
So,
problem.
I was reading last night that the council was moving to reduce the mayor's power. And then the mayor countered with a charter commission. So, you know, there's a bigger game afoot here, I think, based on the performance of the Adams administration and the kinds of, you know, stake in the heart actions that he took, like no library hours on Sunday and, you know, cutting community composting. That, you know, they seem to be prepared, and his intransigence, they seem to be prepared to do something even more, you know, global about the situation. So, you know, bigger game afoot here.
That's right, Mary, and it's getting ugly with Adams versus Adams. It's kind of what's happening right now. So there's a lot of concern about how things are going to turn out, and there's a lot of stuff at stake. Yeah, political chess.
Right, and never underestimate the power of the relationships of people who went to high school together in New York City. And how they play out over a lifetime.
Yeah. No, it is certainly challenging in that it is part of a much larger, you know, it's not a matter of going to DSMY and talking to them. It's part of a larger citywide process, which is very challenging for us to
Right,
deal as a solid waste advisory board when it's a much larger issue than solid waste.
right. And I would say that I was struck by how complimentary the city council members were about sanitation and Commissioner Tisch. And, you know, I think there's a lot of respect for things that she's done, like abandoned cars and cleanup of, you know, trashed out sites and dumping enforcement, things that really are quality of life impacts on communities that she's been addressing.
Yeah. Just to get to this point here with the public schools, and if folks have more info than me, please jump in. But basically, I think a lot of what we've been looking with is the community composting. So that's where you know, individuals are bringing their own organic material to a site that is locally processing the material. Whereas the public schools, it's the same sort of thing as curbside composting, where DSMY is picking up organic material, both from curbside in Queens and Brooklyn, and the public schools. But where that material goes is a separate issue as well, in that a lot of it is being co-digested at wastewater treatment plants instead of being composted. I believe that's I mean, I think that schools on Staten Island are actually composted at the Staten Island site, but yes, yes. I mean, the goal is very much to do curbside, which is diverting organics from the waste stream, but when it is, you know, co-digested, it's not really composting. It's processing organic material outside of the landfill, but not in the most optimal way. Yeah, Allison.
Yeah, just one more thing, and I'm sorry, I'm driving, so I can't really put stuff in the chat. But there's another sanitation committee hearing either Monday or Tuesday, I think. There are a bunch of new bills, and that Mary, maybe you were going to talk about it, but since we're talking composting, there's 696, which is on the agenda, I think, for the oversight hearing next week, and that is basically, asking for compost processing infrastructure in each of the boroughs. So that's an attempt to actually make compost. So I would, just encourage people to attend by Zoom, testify or submit written if you can.
Okay, I've just put a link to submitting testimony in the chat.
Great. Thank you so much. Yeah, so quickly to address this, and then I'll show the hand. Yes, so the two things, you can submitting written testimony, you can submit after I think there's a time, I can't remember if it's 2 days, the same week. But it'll say on there, and you can submit that way. And so you can always submit written testimony for any hearing, regardless of whether you plan to speak or not. You're always able to submit written testimony. If you would like to deliver testimony and have it before the hearing, then you can get scheduled to speak. You don't know when in the queue you'll end up, but you're able to speak. But you're always able to submit testimony this way. Yes, and thank you, Mary. The hand should be at the bottom of the screen. You can also just in chat if you indicate, like I saw you indicated, so I can just call on you now, Daryl.
Okay, thanks. Hi. What I had a question. Well, let me just say this is my first meeting, so I'm not familiar with a lot. I was watching the video from last month, and I saw that you were trying to come up with ways to increase curbside composting. And something came up to me instantly, and I thought I'd bring it up today. If you go to any neighborhood in Queens, it doesn't matter where it is, you see these trucks around, all the landscapers, they're doing all the yards in the neighborhood. And they come into these neighborhoods a couple of times a month. And like I said, they don't just do a house. They'll do 7, 8, 10, 12 houses in that area, then move to another area to do more. If they pass legislation, what I was thinking was, if you pass, and it's simple, in which no one has to do anything different. If they pass legislation that said that the landscapers had to use clear plastic bags instead of the black garbage bags, then that solves a ton of problems, because then all of that grass and leaves and things that they pick up from cutting, those plastic bags can be held to go out with recycling on the same day that compost normally goes out. The homeowner doesn't have to do anything. The landscape companies, the only thing they have to do is when they go to Home Depot, buy the clear bags instead of the black bags, so it doesn't cost them anything either. And people will get into the habit of composting, and that's a start, and it'll make it easier to start adding the foodstuffs and everything else. So I was wondering if anybody had ever mentioned that before.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I mean, I think I don't know currently, and if folks who have yards and work with services, like, definitely chime in. I don't know what the current situation is in terms of who's responsible for like yard clippings. Susan?
The way it works
We
now.
Yeah, we have one of those services for my block, and they take everything, and I think they have a composting facility where they bring all of the yard stuff, all the yard clippings. And they bring it to wherever they're located in Long Island, and they have a place where they compost all of it. So they take all of that with them. It doesn't get left here.
Okay, well, in the I live in South Ozone Park, where I live. The companies that come here are the smaller companies, and they cut the grass, they cut the leaves, they rake it up, they put it in black garbage bags, and they just leave it out.
Mm.
And in a lot of neighborhoods, all they do is they just put it in the black garbage bags. And I've always, and I don't, what I end up doing is I bring them back into the yard, because I do my own composting. And that's just me. Like I said, that none of the other houses do that. And I've always thought, well, if you had clear bags, then this could easily be composted.
Yeah, you're right. That's actually a really good solution. But how, we would just have to figure out what we would recommend to the borough president to get it passed.
Mhm. Mhm.
Isn't it
Well-
simple enough basically to say that companies doing landscaping in New York City are required to use clear plastic bags instead of instead of the black garbage bags?
Yeah, Allison, if you want to, if you're raising your hand to chime in.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that if this is residential and someone, landscapers doing their yard, I mean, composting is mandatory in Queens. So they could easily put their yard stuff in a clear plastic bag and set it out next, are these people using brown bins yet? I mean, I know, the level of participation is low, another issue.
But they wouldn't use a brown bin because they're getting the yard cut, and usually it's 3 to 4 garbage bags full of
Mhm.
grass.
Right, but if they put them in a clear plastic bag and set it out next to a brown bin, it should be collected, I would think, by the city.
But all the landscape companies use black garbage bags. That's what I'm saying. The problem is because it's not mandatory. Everyone I see uses black garbage bags. Any neighborhood that has work done, if you walk through, they just use black garbage bags. The only time I see them using clear bags is in the fall when they're collecting leaves because those bags are so much bigger.
Mhm.
Well, I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
when it actually becomes mandatory and enforced, if a house is setting out organics like that in a black plastic garbage bag, that's going to be a violation. So, but that won't be enforced till April. I mean, I hear what you're saying, and it's a good idea, and we should look into it. But
Yeah.
just one, long term, it should be
Yeah.
built in.
It
Yeah.
might also, and I think that's it could also be something that education might work if we can talk to landscape companies and see, because I think it would be possible to do clear, because I imagine that's the biggest problem is, the likelihood of them doing the work on the day that your compost is picked up is pretty slim. So when it's in the black bag, no one knows that it's organic, and so it just stays there and then is picked up with trash. So if it was readily apparent that it was organic material, the curbside program would pick it up. So it is just a matter of like indicating to DSNY that this is organic material, making sure that it's set out in the way that you set out compost. Like I feel like this is a problem that is solvable because curbside already exists. So it is just that making the connection of how can we make it as easy as possible for people to be setting this out in a way that it'll be picked up. Mary, I see your hand is raised. And you're muted.
This is really an important issue, Daryl. And so what then would happen to it is that it would be put on a train and shipped up to upstate New York and dumped there into a landfill, likely, okay? So, because it would be picked up as probably, go to waste management. So, yeah, big problem.
But isn't the composting in New York done under the Queensboro Bridge?
No, I'm talking about if it goes into a black plastic garbage bag. Yeah.
That's what's happening now. It goes in the landscapers are using black garbage bags and everything is thrown out as trash. If you change it to clear bags, then they'll put it out when it's supposed to be put out. I mean,
Okay.
a lot of times they'll cut the grass on Saturday, but your garbage isn't picked up till Tuesday, so you have to bring the bags in your yard anyway.
And the grass clippings are a particular odor problem. They really can smell foul. So, I mean, the best way to deal with grass clippings, frankly, leave them on the lawn. Okay, they don't have to really be picked up at all.
Oh, I know that, but they do it anyway. Everybody has them picked up.
Yeah, blow and go. People like that look, but yeah, so that's what's happening to them then. Yeah, but this, as Ryan said, this should be solvable. And it's a matter of, educating people and then, enforcement. Anyway,
But by educating people, do you mean for them to tell their landscapers to use clear bags?
uh,
think we can talk to landscape companies.
or,
I doubt that'll work.
I know
yeah,
that's what I'm not sure of, because if it is,
I'm talking about the city, like, there's gotta be a broader educational approach. But anyway, but you're right, it's a big problem. If it's, if it's enough people.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. No, that I think is, especially given the fact that a lot of the material picked up in Queens was yard waste material. I mean, that's a huge component that we need to make sure is being picked up.
But I think Brian and Daryl, I think maybe the first step is whoever is hiring the landscaper, just explain that we're getting fined by having the stuff in black garbage bags. Can you please buy some clear plastic bags? And if people have clear plastic bags and, I don't know, hand them the first couple and then ask that they're gonna have to start, if enough people ask, they would do it, and that would be a much quicker way of resolving it than trying to get legislation passed, because that takes a long time. But that would be my first suggestion, is to try to do it that way. Because yeah, anybody who's using the service should be able to ask that they use a different type of bag.
but I think it's, yeah, something we can definitely work more on and see. I want to move us along to the next topic, but we can certainly circle back if there are other things. Just quickly, the other, well, actually, there's two more. So one piece, moving from compost or organics to plastics. There's still a push going on for the packaging bill, so the EPR packaging bill, as well as the bottle bill. There are a number of groups working on that. I know Beyond Plastics is one that's been organizing a lot. Call-in days, calling your state reps to get this passed. There's definitely more with that. I don't know if someone from Beyond Plastics wants to share ways folks can get involved or any updates. I mean, the all that I really know is that it was moved out of the budget, and so now that we're in the legislative part of the session, trying to pass them as separate pieces of legislation. But yeah, I see you unmuted.
Sorry
Yeah.
to interrupt. I can speak up on behalf of Beyond Plastics. So both of the bills are in the last stages of the committees that they need to be to get out to be voted on the floor. Currently, the Senate is trying to amend both bills. We don't know the amendments to the Packaging Reduction and Recycling Infrastructure Act as of yet. The announcements will be made tomorrow. And the bigger, better bottle bill, I'm not sure about the status of the attempted amendments at the moment, but the holdup is the Senate, really. The Assembly is ready to vote, but the Senate is starting to have a little bit of cold feet on both. So the big asks from Beyond Plastics is to call the Senate Majority Leader, Andrea Stewart-Cousins, and ask that these bills be passed out of committee and be ready for the floor. We would also ask that the bills would be passed as is without any of the watered down amendments. So I'll be sure to put in Andrea Stewart-Cousins' district office and her legislative office numbers in the chat so people have easy access to them. If you're if your representative sponsors these bills and is a Democrat, it would also, especially your senator, since the Senate is where these bills are held up, it would be extra helpful to call them as well and ask them to get this moving. And if you're unsure whether or not your senator co-sponsors the bills, I'm happy to help you figure that out. And I can drop my email in the chat too. So I have some homework to do right now.
Great. Thank you for that. And yeah, I think that's probably the best way, is if folks are interested in getting involved individually with their reps, reaching out to Beyond Plastics is a good way to get involved. We're a little removed since it's the state in terms of as a SWAB, but definitely room for individuals. And Mary, see your hands. And you're mute. There we
Sorry.
go. No worries.
We were asked by the, is it the Canners to provide a letter of support for the bottle bill. And all we did was take Rhonda's testimony that had been submitted from last fall, which was an all SWAB testimony, and provided that with the update that we were approving, we were saying this, we endorsed it as of the bill as of May 20th. And that's why we did it. Just so, everybody's clear on that, before like whatever amendments are going in. Anyway, just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, thank you for that update and for submitting the letter of support. I do want to list the lobbyists that are working against these two bills, so we have some context. Pepsi, Coca-Cola, the American Chemistry Council, Kraft, and McDonald's.
Thank you for that context. And if you get city and state at all, there's often ads. Beyond Plastic has ads, so that's good too. But there's also the Chemical Council, I think they've been running ads in city and state against, I think, particularly the packaging
Yeah.
legislation.
And I think I can't remember where I read it. Maybe somebody here sent it, but it was about plastics, and it said that like 11% of all single-use plastic that ends up in the oceans and everywhere else is produced by Pepsi. So they have a vested interest in, I'll see if I can find it online and I'll put it in the chat, but they have a vested interest in not changing their package, and they're a powerful lobby, so.
Yeah. But great. So that's organics, plastics. The other piece which kind of ties that together with kind of everything else is our local outreach plans. So last meeting we talked about going to deliver presentations to the community boards, presenting like a 101 on what QSWAB is, how we can help the boards, how the boards can help us, along with some information that's tailored to that community district. So breaking down diversion rates, both for organics as well as paper, cardboard, metal, plastic, that sort of thing, getting information at the community district level to talk to folks about the programs that exist, particularly curbside composting, and then also just showing how the community district compares to the rest of Queens and the rest of the city. And part of this is also, we communicate with DSNY and city council members, working with community boards to also issue statements. So with community composting, several of the community boards have submitted their own testimony, submitted letters from the community board to their city council members in support of something. So there's room to work with community boards on solid waste advocacy work, as well as advising community boards. Susan went and gave a presentation to the borough board, which is the chairs of all the community boards. And there's definitely room for education on just what the programs in DSNY are and how people can not only get involved in them, but help us track, if buildings don't have brown bins, for example, or this landscaping issue of black bags. I mean, this is what reaching out to community boards will help with. So we're looking for volunteers. We have a couple resources from Save Our Compost, from the Microplastic Coalition, who presented last month. We have some slides that we can work to craft. We've also piloted a kind of SWAB 101 presentation with one of the community boards. So we need folks to come and help pull together a slide deck. And then as we go out and give the presentation to the community boards, volunteers for that as well. So if folks are interested in that, please reach out. I only heard from a few people about an interest in presenting this. So if you're interested in co-presenting to your community board, whether you're the community board rep or just presenting to the community board where you live, let us know. And if you want to help make the slides, that would also be super helpful. Okay, so with that, so moving to some internal things. So first, membership, the terms of QSWAB members. Basically, starting off will be similar to last year in that we'll send attendance records to the borough president's office, and basically everyone in good standing will be reappointed. So if you are not interested in serving another term, let me know. Otherwise, we'll default to reappointing folks. But we also want to do, we met on Monday as the executive committee, and we really want to push this year to try and reach some new folks. And in particular, based on conversations we've had with the borough board, if we know organizations in the Rockaways in particular, that's an area that we want to work more with because of comments they made about not being served by the curbside program. So we really want to be reaching folks out there to work with them, both to let them know what the programs are and also to help channel issues folks are seeing with the program upward. So I think what I spoke with the borough president's office, and they're fine with us kind of leading a charge to bring in new members. So we'll be developing a not really an application. It'll be more of an information and an indication of interest form that folks can be sending out. Because I think what will work really well is if you have connections to either organizations or just individuals. If you're on this call now and you're not a member, you're invited to submit that once we have the form together. But reaching out to people that you have contacts with, I think will be very successful. So I think if folks have ideas, what we were kind of talking about was focusing on the Rockaways. So if folks know of orgs or individuals there. Our presenter from JFK had expressed interest in getting more involved with the SWAB. There's been a few people to reach out over email that I'm planning to follow up with. But if folks have ideas, I think now would be a good time. We can spend a few minutes brainstorming ways to reach new members to bring in some new folks as we're doing our reappointments. So I'll pause there.
I mean, those of us who know our city council members, that's a good, I mean, the city council members should know if there are organizations in their district. And that might be a good way of identifying people. But I think we should invite as many people as we can because we don't know how many of them will actually be active, if they're even interested. So that's my suggestion.
Yeah, that's great. And Vanessa had volunteered to put together some language to send out to chairs of community boards. All the community boards have a representative already, but if you have folks that you know of who are interested in these things, so we'll have some language that we can share to kind of adapt to reaching out to whether it's city council members or other people. But I think yeah, like Susan said, reaching as many people as possible. So like if you have personal relationships with people who are interested in solid waste and would be interested in spending some time on QSWAB, reaching out to them just in a personal capacity would be great. But we'll also develop some language for folks to send to other organizations that they're aware of but don't have that same relationship. And then I see Mary, your hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to endorse what Susan said and just say that, you know, our committee work is really starved for volunteers. And if there are people who are here tonight who want to join the legislative committee or other committee work, I mean, we really could use your help. You know, people who, like Daryl has mentioned and Daniel has mentioned, you know, ideas for, you know, addressing some of these issues to really make a difference on the ground. And, you know, we'd really welcome your participation. And we need to find a lot more people.
Yep. Yep. That's you know, a lot of, in addition to just wanting to reach new folks, that is a big issue for us. I think all of the committees are struggling with capacity in terms of people joining. So one of the things we're going to be doing is like with the reappointments, being more intentional at that point in time in having people sign up for committees. I think, you know, the committees meet, and ideally there is a committee that meets when you're able to. But I think a lot of this work would also benefit from people who are able to do work independently and communicate via email. So if you're interested in getting involved and are not sure about meeting times, like send an email and we can get you connected and see what that looks like. And when we do the reappointments, we'll be doing which committee are you interested in, and kind of giving those emails then to the chair of that committee to really try and get people more involved. But Mary, I see your hand.
Yeah, I just want to say you don't have to have like a huge amount of expertise either. You know, what's more important is an interest to get something done. So just saying that.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, so I think a general strategy of reaching out to the chairs of community boards, reaching out to your city council folks, and then any orgs that you're aware of, that you have relationships with, reaching out would be super helpful. You know, hopefully we run into the issue where we have too many applications, and then we can figure out if we need to form a committee to review applications or how we want to do that. But I think for the time being, we just want to reach as many people and invite them to express interest and potentially join.
I'm sorry, Ryan, you cut out earlier before. You said something about you talking to the people at JFK and they're interested in getting involved?
Yeah, so I can't remember what meeting it was a few months back. Yeah, Susan.
I think it was in February or March. There's a guy, I think his name is Adam Weinstein, and he is the sustainability person at JFK Terminal 4. And he came, they have, very intense sustainability guidelines for how to reduce the amount of trash that gets, thrown out by the 75,000 or however many people that go through every day. So he did a presentation, and he's interested in getting involved in QSWAB. I mean, my thought is he could learn from us and we could learn from him, because the airports are the two biggest landlords, I guess you would call it, in Queens. And it would be really, I think it would be really helpful to learn from them and from the Port Authority how they divert waste out of landfills. There's still a lot of work I think that they could do around composting, but they are pretty good about their diversion rates, I think, for recyclables. But of course, it's a whole different situation because it's people that are just passing through, and there's a ton of waste that comes out of there. So yeah, so he's somebody interested in joining QSWAB.
Okay, the reason I was asking is because I'm in Community Board 10, and Community Board 10, JFK is in that community board. We have a JFK committee, so I guess I'll talk to them and find out, what else they can tell me about that.
If you also go to JFK Terminal 4, they have a whole page about like some of their metrics about how much they divert each year, if you want to take a look at that.
Okay, and they do it for the entire airport, obviously.
No,
Or
it's
are they
only
just
for
doing it for
Terminal
them?
4.
Just for-
Every terminal at JFK and at LaGuardia is independently, I don't know if it's independently operated
So they're
by,
responsible for their own waste.
so they're responsible, each terminal is responsible for that terminal's waste. And Terminal 4 was the one that I found that had a lot of information available online with waste diversion information. And he had like I mean, this is what he has done for a living. He's got like a master's degree in something related to that. But every single terminal has its own staff, and it's got its own sustainability person, and it's got its own guidelines for how they divert waste.
Oh, okay. So I'll talk to my JFK committee and see if they know who the other people are. That could help. All right.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Or we can also go to Port Authority, because he gave us some contacts from Port Authority, and they're the sustainability people who oversee the airports in Queens. So that would be LaGuardia as well.
Okay. All right, thanks. Okay.
Great, great. So yeah, so I think for connections, like feel free to make them now, whenever. We can send out the form. We just have to make it. I wanted to make sure that the borough president's office was fine with kind of us doing it, and it's not on their website. They said to go ahead and make one, and if we want to try and put it on their website, we can. We'll ask them to send out some info as well. But basically we'll get that form together so that you can start sending that out to folks that you are able to just reach out to individually. For other folks, once we have that language drafted, we'll also send that around so that you can email your council members, other folks who you think may know folks. So we'll send those, but I'd say for individuals and organizations that you have relationships with, reaching out now is great. Starting that. Great. So the other side of that, so that's with membership. The other side of that is officer elections. And so basically this is what we were proposing from the executive committee is basically the way that our meetings go for the summer is, so our next meeting is June 26th, followed by July 24th, August, we're usually off, and then we pick up again in September. Elections typically take place in June. What we were thinking would make sense is basically proposing an amendment to the bylaws to create a co-chair position. So instead of having the single chair, having a co-chair, you know, we can have those discussions about pros and cons of that. But basically, our proposal is that we amend the bylaws to have a co-chair position. And so what that means is basically we would push back elections until July. We would discuss in June the proposal to the bylaws to allow for a co-chair. The nominating committee would present the slate in June, and then in July we would vote on the bylaw change and on the slate of officers. So that would be pushing things back a month, but I think you know, the proposal to amend the bylaws to have a co-chair would make it easier to find people to appoint. And yeah.
And it would make it easier, I think, for whoever is serving as chair, if they're, because I guess that would be two co-chairs or a chair.
Mhm.
I guess it would be two co-chairs, right? But no longer a president and a vice president. And
Mhm.
it would just mean that it's not as much responsibility on one person because, you know, it's hard to make every single meeting if you've got other stuff going on, plus other committee meetings on top of that. So that was our idea, was about creating the co-chair positions instead. And that way, whoever is leading gets to split the work with somebody else in a different way than we're able to do right now.
Yeah, Mary.
Yeah, I hear you. I guess that the legislative committee has been grappling with this. You know, we linked forces with the Brooklyn SWAB, you know, as a way of distributing, you know, the work, basically. And we actually have meetings now that involve 3 of the SWABs regularly. You know, again, it's an all volunteer group, and distributed responsibility makes sense. And that's why we also, you know, we're suggesting that instead of like responding to everything going on, we take a position and then we react from our position to what's going on outside, not just react to like everything that's going on outside. So I hear you. I guess that what I would say is we still need to be able to do leadership decision making. And, you know, there has to be a structure for doing that as a SWAB and then as a, you know, an all SWAB group, because there's so much power in the SWABs. So that's my comment.
And I think there still would be structure and there would be leadership and there would be ways that things get approved. It's just that instead of having one person who's the president, right? Then you have the vice president who doesn't have nearly as much work as the president does. You have two people and they can, you know, they can sit in for each other. So if one person can't be there, everything can still happen. That's what the vice president does. And honestly, Mary, the 5 SWABs are more powerful than any single SWAB. And so I think that having those legislative committee meetings, et cetera, makes a lot more sense than doing it on our own, since most of the issues that we're grappling with are citywide. They're not just our borough. So I think that makes a lot of sense. We are and then that way those united committees, I feel like, can get a lot more done, and then the people on the different SWABs can bring it back to the SWAB. But I think that that makes the most sense, and it takes the fewer people that are interested in that committee work, and make it more feasible than trying to get a group of people, because we haven't had a lot of traction with our committees on QSWAB. And our numbers have dropped substantially if you look at how many people are here at tonight's meeting. So I think getting new people in, making it easier for for meetings, et cetera. And I think continuing to move forward with the joint meetings makes a lot of sense.
I'm just curious, so what will the executive body look like? We have 2 co-chairs, no vice chair, correct? So 2 co-chairs, no longer a vice president. Recording secretary, we don't have a corresponding secretary, right? Do we have a corresponding secretary? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, so okay, so everything else stays as is, and eliminating the vice chair position or vice president position, and just having 2 co-chairs.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's flexibility around exactly how we want to structure things, but I think that that is the general idea, was to probably replace the vice with just a co-chair.
All right, and then each co-chair would have a defined responsibilities that would be in the bylaws, or do you guys just make it up as you go?
I think it would be that there's a chair. So let's say it's a chair and a co-chair, that I mean, a lot of times it's
Well,
just
what's the difference between a chair and a co-chair and a president
Well,
and a vice president?
the only difference is that the co-chairs would split the responsibilities. Right now, the vice president steps in when the president is not available, but the
Okay.
president is responsible for, right now, sending out all the meetings, scheduling everything, monitoring, the account, physically having to turn on the Zoom for the Zoom calls to happen, leading the executive committee. It's a
No,
lot of stuff.
I get
So if
it.
those responsibilities are split between 2 people, then they can
Understood.
decide, between themselves how to split it. If one person wants to do the administrative and the other person wants to do the leading the meetings, great. If they want to split it 50-50, then
Right.
it just means that it's half the amount of work. And it
Okay,
means
so
that
it would
that vice
just be a decision made between the 2 co-chairs. It will not be defined responsibilities for each co-chair, right? Is that what I'm hearing? I'm trying to understand, when you bring forward this in your bylaws, will there be defined responsibilities for each co-chair? That's all I'm asking.
I think it will just be that there are 2 co-chairs, and then it would list all of the responsibilities that are listed under
Under
president
that.
right now. And then the
Okay.
vice president, and that one can serve, when the other is not available.
Okay.
Either one of them. I think that's how it would end up. I think that's how most co-chairs end up working. Again, to just split the responsibility with someone else.
Well,
That's if the borough president's office says that we can do that.
okay. Well, I think there's something to be said for distribution of work. Because I know at the leadership level, a lot of responsibilities fall on the leader. So if you're able to be able to distribute, and each co-chair pull their weight, then I'm good with it. I'm okay with it. But you could also end up with one co-chair doing more than the other, especially if responsibilities are not defined.
Absolutely. At the same time, if you have somebody who's elected as the co-chair and they get sick, or they have an emergency or something else, you've got somebody who just steps right into it to take care of it. So, which I guess is true with the vice president, but I don't know that the vice president right now would be like, yeah, I think sharing the responsibilities from the beginning makes it easier than filling in when somebody steps down, if that makes sense.
It does. Okay, thank you.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, so I think like the proposal for right now, which I can make into a motion, but the proposal now is just to basically delay the election from June to July, with the understanding that we would be trying to amend the bylaws, and that's why we're delaying the election.
I'd second that.
Okay, great. So I'll say the motion is to table elections until July, to put forth a amendment to the bylaws allowing for a co-chair.
I'll make
Sumi-
the motion.
Okay, so Susan.
Second.
We have a second. Does anyone want to discuss more, or are we? I'll pause for a second if anyone has question, comment. Great. So, well, actually, I don't know that we have a quorum. But I think we can vote on this now and then send it out. Because when we don't have quorum, the bylaws say we can send out an electronic vote afterwards. So if we vote on this now, we don't have a quorum, so we'll have to send out an electronic vote, but I think that we can still do that. So, all in favor of holding off elections until July? Oh, Mary, do you have a comment, or are you voting yes?
I'm voting.
Great, okay. Say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
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 Great. I'm gonna pause, let people lower their hands before. Great. And any opposed? Raise your hand or say aye. Any abstentions? Great. So the motion passes without a quorum, so we'll send it to electronic vote. But presumably we'll be holding off on elections until July. So our June meeting, we will review the proposed amendment to the bylaws, as well as a slate of folks, which means the nominating committee will be brought back together. I'm gonna call on Mary first and then talk more about that. Yeah, Mary.
I would just say that whoever is considered for these positions, it needs to commit to actually going to meetings and participating. It has to be people who actually want to do the work, not as an honorary position or, whatever.
So yes, so the way that these things work is we have a nominating committee that reaches out to folks to gauge interest and eventually puts forth a slate of nominees for the board to vote on. So if that's something you're interested in, right now, let me know. Either by typing in the chat or raising your hand. Otherwise, I'll reach out to folks from the previous nominating committees, other folks as well. But if that's something you're interested in, let me know. The idea would be to have for the next meeting, so essentially a month, a slate of individuals to present. Obviously, if there's a position that's not gaining a lot of traction, that's fine. At the June meeting, we can talk and see if there's volunteers. But the idea would be to have a slate for the next meeting. Yeah, Mary.
Yeah, I would just say that it would be very helpful to start out by canvassing the current board to see who's willing to stay on. That would be a great help to anyone and then also the people who showed up tonight, especially the new people. Are you interested? People from the community boards, that would be great.
Yeah. I can send a quick survey. we talked briefly at the executive committee meeting about folks, the existing officers, their interest. But I can send out a general survey to the broader SWAB, and just see if there are folks who are interested in a specific position or just joining but need more info. Yeah, I can send that out to provide that with the nominating committee. Perfect. Let's see. I think that was, yep, great. Awesome. So we can move now into committee reports. I think the overarching theme that I heard from committee chairs tonight, but also before tonight, is just really needing folks to show up at committee meetings. Some committees have not even gotten responses to set a meeting time. So there's not a ton to report back on, other than we really need folks to join committees. We talked a little bit about that earlier, but just reiterating now, before moving in for folks who have updates, is that just across the board, if you're not involved in a committee, let me know.
I have a comment.
Yeah.
You may have folks that's willing to commit to committees, but meetings need to be set. We need to know when the meeting will be, and not at the last minute that changes over and over and over. There needs to be a level of commitment from the leader as to this is our meeting time and day, and this is how it's going to be for the next 6 months. That's my comment. That's how you bring people in and you keep them involved. Otherwise, you lose people.
Definitely. Yeah, I think that's definitely a good point that when we go in with the reappointments and essentially, like, my ideas is that when we're sending out the information to let folks know that they've been either appointed or reappointed, in addition to saying, do you accept, also indicating the committee that they're most interested in working on. And so I think having a time set at that point would be really important, so people can see these are the committees, this is what they work on, and this is when they meet. So we'll make sure to have that prepared for when we're having people select. I'll start. Mary, I know you've talked about some of the things that the legislative committee has worked on, but I'll give you the floor for just general anything.
Everyone should check their email. I sent out a report earlier. So I really don't have anything, much to add to that. We do have, our meetings are on the third Thursday of the month at 6:30. We pretty much always meet then. And it's in the SWAB calendar. If anyone has questions about, and I spoke about what we did this month. We are, we're trying to, like, cover the waterfront with a few people, so please join. The next meeting is the third Thursday of June, which will be, let's see. That's the 20th, June 20th.
Great. Thank you. I'll say, Bilal, I know the EJ committee wasn't able to meet. Do you have updates other than join the committee?
No updates at this point.
Great. Thank you. And Jenny, same thing.
Just basically we got reached out on Instagram to join a event on June 20th at Solar One in Long Island City. So if anyone's interested, I think Dan is going to check if he can go. If anyone else wants to join him, we have to just submit a application by this Friday. And I think it's free or it's like donation based for nonprofits. So that could be a good way to kind of get more members. And I'll I'll put the application link in the chat.
What day was that again? June.
Thursday, June 20th. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Perfect. Yeah, I think I'm available then, so I think that's something we can move forward with. And if folks are interested in coming, helping set up, preparing material for it, or being there for a couple hours, that would be greatly appreciated. But I think we can move forward with that for sure.
Great.
Awesome. So I mean, I know we covered a ton of individual action items and stuff folks can get involved with, but is there anything else folks have in terms of announcements that they want to share? Seeing none, any events or anything? Great. So that's all I have. I'll send out an email. There's a lot of reaching out to folks that we have work on, but I'll send that, as well as the recording of this meeting will be put up. And we will be in touch. So with that, is there a motion to adjourn? Susan, is there a second? Mary?
Second.
Great, perfect. All in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Great, any opposed? Abstentions? Awesome. So with that, we're adjourned. Thank you everyone so much. And I'll be sure to follow up.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Have a great night. Be safe, everybody.